the 24th chapter. I want to begin in verse 14. That's Joshua, the 24th chapter. Beginning in the 14th verse. You had to say amen. If we need to say wait. Thank God we're all there together. It reads, "Now therefore fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and in truth, and put away the gods which your fathers served on the other side of the flood. And in Egypt and serve ye the Lord. And if it seem evil unto you to serve the Lord, choose you this day whom you will serve, whether the gods which your fathers served that were on the other side of the flood, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land ye dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." And the people answered and said, "God forbid that we should forsake the Lord to serve other gods." You may be seated.
Amen.
Choose ye this day whom you will serve.
All right.
Choose ye this day whom ye will serve. If you don't mind, if you'll look at your neighbor and say, who will you choose?
Who will you choose?
That's what we want to preach about on this morning. Who will you choose? Life is full of choices.
Amen.
God gives us that grace that we can choose what we want to do.
Oh, yes.
You woke up this morning and you made some choices. You chose what you would wear, chose what you would drive, and if you did eat this morning, you chose what you would eat. Life is full of choices.
Amen.
I must hasten to tell you, though, behind every choice, there are some consequences.
Amen. Yes,
All choices, you have some good choices, and you have some bad choices. And some choices, when you make them, if you made a bad choice, I told you there are consequences. But there are some consequences that you ought not want to face. Because some choices have eternal bearings.
yes.
And can I tell you, Joshua said, choose ye this day whom you will serve. He told them this day because Joshua, in his theology, understood that tomorrow is not promised.
Amen.
Told you that time waits on no man.
Amen.
Time is running out. And although God is not limited by time, we are.
Yes. Amen.
Told you that God comes out of eternity and works over into time and then steps back over into eternity. But can I tell you that time runs out for us?
Amen.
And when your time on this earth is over, you've got to stand before God and answer for your choice.
Amen.
Not trying to scare anybody, but it's just the truth. You got to stand before the Lord and answer for the choices that all of us have made. Some were some good choices and some were some bad choices.
Amen.
But there is an ultimate choice. Then either you are going to go to heaven or you're going to go to hell.
Amen.
You know, it's time out for sugary gospel of telling us that God would just spank us on our hand. There are some choices. And you have got to decide what side you want to be on.
All right.
I like what Joshua did in this chapter, because the first thing I see is that he revisits. He revisits through verses 1 through 13. He gives us God's history. He tells them that your fathers or your forefathers before the flood served idol gods. Started to preach from Genesis 6 this morning, but God led me another way. But can I tell you that God will start over? Y'all ain't in here. That's why you ought not be ashamed to start over. Because even God has started over. But the interesting thing with God there is that God did not start over because he made a mistake. Y'all ain't in here. God starts over because we make mistakes.
Amen.
And when God starts over, that's mercy.
All right. Yeah. Glory. Hey.
He caused the flood because the people had become exceedingly evil.
Yeah.
Their mind was always on doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Lord said, I see nothing but evilness, corruption, and violence. He says, and I'm repentful that I have made man. He said, and their sin and their corruption and their evilness have come up to me. He said, and now I have decided to destroy them. I know this ain't no shouting message, but it's still the truth. One thing, you see God's mercy because he gave them warning.
Yeah.
He kept warning them over and over again. Here's the mercy in it, not only with the warning, but watch this. In God's history, he gave that warning was preparation. And can I tell you that if you look around in this world, you don't even have to turn the news on. If you go out your front door, you see nothing but evilness, corruption, and folks doing what they want to do. Yeah. People are not studying God. They are doing what they want to do, all kind of violence, all kind of crime. And can I tell you that God, there is a reckoning day coming. I know that we think we got all the time in the world. I'm young, I'm old, whatever age you are. When God gets ready to come back, baby, he's coming back. Nothing is going to hold him from coming back.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
He says, I'm going to destroy them. But watch this. He finds Noah. That's mercy in himself. Because had not he found Noah, all mankind, y'all ain't in here, would be destroyed. What does that mean? Let me show you where you fit in that picture at. Had he decided to destroy everybody, you wouldn't be here.
Yeah. Amen.
So he told Noah, he said, I want you to build me an ark. That was preparation. And can I tell you that all while Noah was building the ark, people were making fun. Man, what are you doing? What's going on? Noah's telling them it's going to rain. Watch this. You got to watch God. if you follow the Bible, it had never rained before. If you watch the Bible, the way God watered the grass was up through the ground. People had never heard of rain. It had never rained before, and Noah's saying, look, God is going to cause it to rain and it's going to flood. They're marking, they're going on about their business. And can I tell you, don't get upset when people make fun because God got you building an ark. See, because I don't know how you feel about it, but when the flood comes, when the storm comes, I want to be over in the Lord. Amen. You got to understand what that ark really symbolizes. That's Jesus. See, there's nowhere in the Bible that is not talking about Jesus. All 66 books, from old to new, is still talking about Jesus. Yeah. There's nowhere in the Bible where you say, this ain't about Jesus. All of it. Every verse is about Jesus. Y'all ain't in here. He says, I want to show you the history of God. He says, first of all, he says, preparation. He said, God has sent his warning out to prepare us, and yet they still did not listen. All right. He gives his history. He said, but not only that, he said, but in God's history, God gives a promise. He said, on the other side of the flood, here comes Abraham. It's all in there. If you go through verses 1 through 13, you'll see it there. He even deals with Abraham. He deals with Abraham because he made a covenant with Abraham. And although Abraham got with his wife's handmaid and had Ishmael because they couldn't wait, they were so impatient for the promise, even in him rushing, God still delivered the promise, which is Isaac. Y'all ain't in here. He says, not only in God's history do I see his preparation, not only do I see him delivering his promise, he said, but then I see God in his protection. He says, now, on the other, he said, I killed those in the flood, but on the other side of the flood, he said, I prepared you for the flood. Some of you didn't listen, so they were destroyed. He said, then on the other side of the flood, I gave Abraham my promise. He said, but watch this. He said, then I protected you. Yeah. He said, now your people were down over in Egypt. Yes, sir. He said, and I had to send Moses and Aaron to Pharaoh and to continuously to go to him and say, God says, let my people go. He says Pharaoh was hard-headed, didn't want to listen, and finally he let him go. And once he let him go, his heart became hard and tried to pursue them. I told you that the Red Sea is before them, the enemy is behind them, and God still protected them because he opened up the Red Sea. Y'all ain't in here. He opened up the Red Sea. He opened up the Red Sea for it to be dry ground for them, but the grave for their enemy. Yeah. Isn't it funny that your enemy can't walk where you walk? And when they're trying to pursue you, when the devil is on your track and your enemy is on your track, God will sometimes get you in a place to where you got to trust him. Yeah. You can't see your way. You got something behind you. You got something in front of you. And you just got to step out. Y'all ain't in here. On faith. Martin Luther King said something very profound. He said this. He says, faith is taking a step when you can't see the staircase. Amen. And sometimes you got to just go ahead and take a step even when you don't know what you're stepping in and stepping on. Amen. He says, I had to revisit them. He said, not only did I bring you out of Egypt, he said, but when I brought you out, he said, I brought you to a land that you didn't even have to lay before. He says, not only in God's history do you see preparation, do you see promise, you see protection, he said, but you see provision. Let me bring it a little closer because y'all looking at me like I ain't in here preaching. If you look back over your life, you know your own history, but look at God's history in your life. Yeah. Even when you were doing the wrong thing, God sent out warnings to you. He warned you now. And then watch this, God prepared you. Yeah. Not only did God prepare you, God gave you a promise that if you come to me, I'll take care of you. Yeah. And did he not meet his word? He said, not only did I give you a promise, he said, but I have protected you. There were some things that supposed to got you, but I didn't allow it. You supposed to serve some time that y'all ain't in here. You supposed to have been dead and gone, and yet and still, God protected you. And not only did he protect you, he said, I have provided for you. You just ever had God to say, huh? Y'all ain't in here. I have had God to just give me, run over with blessings. It ain't all about money. Look, joy, strength, health, family. Y'all ain't in here. Peace of mind, understanding.
Man.
He says, Joshua revisits. He said, I want you to look at God's history. Then he gets in verse 14. He says, now, I've revisited the history of God with you, how God has taken care of you. I've given you God's track record. He said, but now that I've given you God's track record, he said, now choose.
Yes.
He said, but there are some requirements when you choose. Here's the requirements. It says in verse 14, now therefore fear the Lord. He said, here's one of the requirements, Ms. Cousin, that if you're going to serve God, you've got to serve him fearfully.
Amen.
What does that mean? It says that you have to honor him with the highest regards. That means that, now remember, he's talking to them really about idols. Idols are little gods or things or graven images that we make and bow down to them. They are made out of material. Are y'all in here?
Amen.
But God is a spirit. And those that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth.
Amen.
He said a lot of folks are making graven images. They made these gods. Who can make God? Who would make something and then want to bow down to it? Y'all ain't in here. That's why I can't understand how people bow down to their cars, how they bow down to jobs, how they bow down to house. Those are material things. They can be here 1 minute and be gone the next. I can't understand why people bow down to money. Look right here. God don't mind you having money, and people get it wrong. They say money is the root of all evil. That's not what the Bible says. It says the love of money is the root of all evil. When you make money your God, y'all ain't in here. He says, you've got to honor him with the highest regard. That means that in your life there is nothing higher than God. Jeanette can't be higher than God. Jonathan can't be higher than God. Little Josh can't be higher than God. Jonathan can't be higher than God. None of my kinfolk can be higher than God. My job can't be higher than, y'all ain't in here. My money can't be higher than God. My cars can't be higher than God. None of that stuff can be higher than God. Even church can't be higher than God. You got to hold him with the highest regard. You've got to serve him fearfully.
Amen.
He says not only is that the requirement that you got to serve him fearfully. Watch here. He said, and serve him in sincerity.
Yes. Amen.
And in truth.
Amen.
Watch this. He says, not only do you have to serve him fearfully, but you got to serve him with fullness. And serve him in sincerity. What that means is not only do I honor him with the highest regards, but I work for him without any reservations.
Amen.
I know I'm preaching.
Amen. Yes, you are.
What that means, Roger, is that when I work for God, there's no limit to what I'll do for God. If he says go, I got to go. If he says wait, I got to wait. If he says be quiet, I got to, y'all ain't in here. If he says be quiet, I got to be quiet. If he says bow down, bow down. If he says get up, get up. He says that I work with, there is nothing that I will not do for God. See, people come and play and say, for God I'll live and for God I'll die. See, but you better know what you're saying. I told y'all before, I'll tell you this, I've shared this before, there was a church service, they were having church, and some men came in with masks and with the assault rifles, and they asked them, say, who's on the Lord's side? He said, because whoever's on the Lord's side is going to die today. And people flooded out, running. Just a few stayed and said, well, I'm willing to die for the Lord. And so then the men pulled off their masks, sat down the guns, said, now we can have church. What are you saying? That a lot of people come in playing. And God don't mind meeting you where you are, but you got to be devoted to him sincerely. Amen. Now, Lord, I know I still have some struggles. There's still some things on me, but Lord, even in my struggles, I'm sincere. Y'all ain't in there. Even in my struggles, I'm sincere. Lord, I know this thing is, look, I'm dragging it, Lord. I'm trying to get it off of me, but at least I'm sincere. See, folks can come in and they can look all beautiful. They can dress up how they want to and be just as nasty as they want to be. Heart ain't right. Mind ain't right. They ain't trying. They know, look, they know how to say hallelujah. They know everywhere to hit the service. And they know what to say. They know church rhetoric. Amen. But don't know the master. Amen. And then you'll have somebody that don't look so good. Or who you think don't look so good. And heart can be just as pure. God uses who he wants to. He said there are some requirements. He said you've got to serve him faithfully. You've got to serve him with fullness. I'm all the way in. All or nothing. You know, in the Bible, and I think it's over in Revelations, he says, I want you to be either hot or cold. If you're lukewarm, he said, I'll spew you out my mouth. That means that you in between. You got to get on the side where you want to be. If you want to be cold, be cold. There's consequences for being cold. There's consequences for being lukewarm. But there's a reward for being hot for the Lord. Amen. He says there are some requirements. He said not only do you have to serve him fearfully, fullness, he said, but you've got to serve him with faithfulness. Amen. It's right here. He says, and serve him in sincerity and in truth. What he's saying is, he says, you've got to be committed to continue. Amen. There's a lot of people start stuff, but don't finish it. They put their hand, you know, it's in the Bible where it says, don't put your hand to the plow and look back. That means when you put your hand towards the service of God, don't look back where you came from. Don't go back where you can't. Keep your eyes on the prize. Keep working for the Lord. Keep your eyes on Jesus, because that's the only thing that's going to get you through. Amen. Through ups, through downs, through trials, tribulations, that's the only thing that will get you through. And can I tell you that not only they say that working for the Lord pays off after a while, but can I tell you that it'll pay sometime right now? Amen. Yes, it will. I can't tell you how I have went some places and was down. I was down in my own spirit, and God would bring somebody in my midst for me to share with them. And when I began to share with them about the goodness of God, even though I ain't feeling good, y'all ain't in here. Yeah. Even though I ain't feeling good, and when I started to share the goodness of God to them, not only am I witnessing to them, but I'm witnessing to myself. And then I leave feeling uplifted. Amen. He says, I revisited God's history. He said there are some requirements, saying, now therefore fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and truth, and put away the gods which your father served on the other side of the flood, and in Egypt serve ye the Lord. And then he goes on in verse 15, and if it seem evil unto you to serve the Lord, choose you this day whom you will serve, whether the gods which your father served that were on the other side of the flood, or the gods of the Amorites whose land ye did well. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. You got to watch Joshua, because what Joshua makes a personal decision. He said, now y'all do what you want to do. I've given you God's history. I've given you God's requirements. He said, first of all, it's personal. Amen. He said, but as for me, he said, I'm going to serve the Lord. He said, now, when I make that personal choice, he said, not only am I going to personally serve him, he said, but for everything that's in my rule in my house, we going to serve the Lord. Are y'all in here? He said, we going to serve the Lord no matter what y'all do. And see, that's how committed you got to be, no matter what mama or daddy want to do, no matter what sister or brother want to do, children, you got to be committed to the Lord.
Amen. Amen.
He says you got to be committed to continue. I'm going to give you this last. Then you have to watch their response. They said in verse 16, and the people answered and said, God forbid that we should forsake the Lord to serve other gods. Roger, this is what their response was really saying. When they said, God forbid, and we cannot forsake him. That word forsake comes from a Hebrew word which means to let go. Ladies, what they were saying is, in their response, they said, we can't let go of him who has never let us down.
Yeah.
You know, they have a hymn that says, hold to God's unchanging hand. Yeah. It talks about that life is full of swift transitions. But one thing that doesn't change is God's hand. His hand is still in your situation. No matter what is going on, no matter how you feel, no matter how down and out you feel, God still has his hand out. And if you took God's hand, don't let it go. And can I tell you that now, see, it ain't so much that you got God's hand, but God got your hand.
Yeah.
But don't pull away from God. Keep on with God. See, I can't let go of him who has never let me down. That's crazy. That's foolishness. Look, I've been in some dark places, been through some trials and tribulations. I've been in some places that some folks in here don't even know. Situations that some of them folks in here don't even know. But God has sold me through. Right. And how can I let go of a God that has never let me down? When I was down in the dumps, God still reached out his hand and picked me up. Cleaned me off. I can't let go of a God that won't let me down.
Sorry.
Money has let me down.
Yes.
Cars have quit on me.
Yes.
Jobs have let me go.
Right.
Folks have walked out of my life.
Yes.
Never to talk to me again, but God is still there.
Thank you,
Yes,
Lord.
he is.
I can't let go of him who won't let me down.
Amen.
You know, the world thought on that Friday, mama, that Jesus was going to let us down.
Yes, they did.
Told you they nailed him to the cross. What a letdown. And tore his beard all out his face. What a letdown. Thought you were God. Thought you could work miracles. Folks holler, now save yourself if you're the Son of God.
Yeah.
Looking like he's going to let us down, don't it?
Yes.
Put them half to death. Look like he's going to let us down. Pierced them in his side.
Yeah.
Then it's looking like the story ain't looking too good. Crown of thorns around his head, pressed into his temples. Look like he's going to let us down, John. Gave up the ghost. Now he's dead. He's given up the ghost and died. My Lord, look like he's let us down. All Friday, it looked like he's letting us down. All Saturday. Thought you was going to get up. Look, Josh, he's letting us down. But early, Sunday morning, he got up with all power in heaven and in earth in his hands. I can't let go of who won't let me down, who can't let me down. When I need joy, he gives it to me. When I need strength, he gives it to me. When I'm feeling down, he picks me up. When I'm down in the dumps, he brushes me off. He cleaned me up. He clothed me. He fed me. He's taken care of me. He led me. He protected me. He got his arms all around me. He put joy down in my heart. He wiped my tears away. He protected me in my home. So how can I let go of he who has not let me down? I deserved death. And he gave me life. I can't let go. Choose you this day whom you will serve. I'll check his track record. I know his history in my life. I can't let go. He ain't never. He ain't never. He has never. I got to say this again. He ain't never left me. When I thought I was alone, he was all around me. I've been by myself, and he sent his angels with me. He sent them before me and behind me and all around me. When I was asleep at night, even on last night, he had his angels encamped all around our house, all around our bed. I can't let go. Back has been up against the wall, slept on the floor. He ain't let me down. I had somewhere to sleep. Had lights, had food, had clothing. He ain't let me down.
Thank you, sir.
We cried together. He still didn't let us down. Thought we weren't going to never have to. He didn't let us down.
Thank you, Jesus.
Tried for years, but God, he didn't let us down. I can't let go. I've got to hold on to him.
Oh, yes.
I know his history.
Thank you.
And his history keeps repeating itself over and over again. The God is good. 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 It's the same message over and over again. God is good. Then I can't let go. He ain't never let me down. You might feel sometimes that God will let you down, but he ain't let you down. He just trying to get you to take that step.
Yes.
You don't see nothing there. But you know that's the direction that God wants to take it. You can't see the staircase. Take the step anyhow. Step out on faith.
Amen.
Step into his hands. Step into, those are the best hands
Oh, yes.
to be in. Those hands won't harm you. Now he'll hurt you. Y'all didn't catch that. He will hurt you. But his hurt is to help you.
Amen.
But it's not to harm you.
Yes.
See, because some things got to be snatched out of your mind,
Yeah.
out of your heart, out of your emotions, out of your lifestyle.
Amen.
Hey, but I can't let him go. He ain't never. Never. Ever. Through the rain. I'm trying to go, y'all. Through the storm. He was still there.
Yes.
Good times. Bad times.
Yeah.
I'm checking his history, y'all. He was there.
Yes. Oh,
You know that song said he was there all the time, waiting patiently.
yeah.
He's been there all my life. Been here 40 years. Almost going to be 40. He's been there. All your life he's been there. All your life he's been there. He's seen you through dangers, toils, and snares. He's been there. With his grace and his mercy. He's been there. Even when you hadn't chosen, he was still there.
Amen.
He said, I'm going to wait on you. He got his hand out. You know, it's kind of disrespectful for somebody to put their hand out and you leave them hanging. It's up to you. Choose ye this day. Who will you choose? Go to church.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
No matter what you're going through,